This is actually a really good question, and the short answer is they were doing their best, but absolutely walking around with dandruff, scalp inflammation, lice infestations, and hair loss. All of it, constantly, often hidden by wigs, but we have the receipts. A rawer diet probably did help a slow sebum production somewhat. The rest of their biology is the same as ours. They just didn't have the full picture. Egyptian mummies have been recovered with over 400 mummified lice on a single head. 400 on just one person. And these weren't like peasants. Some of these people were royalty. Egyptian royalty, buried with solid gold lice combs, because lice were so universal that you brought your grooming tools to the afterlife. A 3,500-year-old Egyptian medical papyrus documents treatments for patchy hair loss, what we now recognize as alopecia areata. The Roman physician Celsius described it in 30 CE and recommended caustic compounds and scalp scarification. And that treatment remained essentially unchanged for the next 1,500 years because they had no idea what was actually causing it. So there's a little bit of a romanticizing history that our ancestors just all had beautiful, healthy hair through natural living, and it's not actually what the archaeological record shows. However, they weren't doing nothing. They were working really hard with what they had. Pre-Columbian African hair care was genuinely sophisticated. The styling rituals took hours, sometimes days. Shea butter, chebe powder, plant-based oils, they provided real conditioning, real moisture, and real cuticle protection. West Africa had African black soap, which is a true surfactant, meaning it could actually emulsify some sebum. India had soap berries, which have been used since the Indus Valley civilization and actually do have some mild antifungal properties against Melisacea. The word shampoo literally comes from the Hindi word for that cleansing ritual. These weren't folk remedies in the dismissive sense, they were the most biologically intelligent approaches available at the time. They just couldn't fully solve the problem because the science didn't exist yet. And some of them are actually combining the best of everything our ancestors figured out and then going further. African black soap got close. It was a real surfactant. It could emulsify sebum. Euphora does that, but at the right pH, so it's not destroying your acid mantle in the process. Soap berries had mild antifungal properties against Melisacea. Euphora addresses Melisacea at the 3 biological points simultaneously: remove the food supply, slow sebum production at the source, and reducing the inflammation the yeast triggers. Shea butter, chebe powder, and plant oils gave us real cuticle conditioning. Euphora replenishes the actual fatty acid that lives on the outside of a healthy cuticle, the one that's often stripped by heat, chemicals, and even alkaline soaps at the molecular level. This is not like a coating on top like some of those cheaper other brands. This is actually replenishing the actual structure of the hair. And the hair loss that Egyptian physicians were treating with caustic compounds for 1,500 years? Euphora's scalp therapy and For Him lines inhibit the enzyme that actually drives DHT-related hair loss, botanically and without a prescription. That's one answer that nobody had an answer for until very recently. But it also means that Egyptian wigs weren't just fashion, they were functional. When scalp problems became unmanageable, you covered them. Same reason you saw elaborate head coverings across cultures throughout history. It wasn't purely aesthetic or always a religious reason. You also have to look at diet, chronic inflammation, nutritional deficiency, and stress. All of these things affect sebum production and scalp health. Our ancestors weren't necessarily eating better across the board, but they also weren't dealing with the specific inflammatory inputs of modern ultra-processed diets. But that's a whole nother video. The honest answer to your question is that they had the same problems we have, but they also had fewer tools to address them and a lot more acceptance that hair and scalp issues were just part of being alive. It's actually why I find this history so useful, because when someone tells you to go back to natural methods, they're romanticizing history. And those traditions were brilliant for what they had, but they were incomplete. Meanwhile, Euphora has the full picture that they were working towards. There's a full blog post on this scheduled for Monday, so check back for more.